Enjoy local voices. Enjoy local opinions. All on one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast.DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts, featuring some of the DC area's best personalities, pundits, and provocateurs. Earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts you love instantly. With new programs being added every week, don't hesitate. Download Podcast.DC now for free. Available in the App Store or in Google Play. Podcast.DC. Listen local.
Say It Loud Network and Mino Lion Media presents Business First.
Hi, all, and welcome to a new episode of Business First with Sonia Aline. I am your host, and today is the Money Show. But we're going to be talking about some things that you might not have been thinking about if you are developing your business or growing your business. Today in the studio, we have financial advisor Reggie Canal. And so among the things we're going to be talking about today are the importance of things like a buy-sell agreement or how to use insurance as a way to wealth build or grow your business, the importance of having an advisory team, and what having a management team says to a potential investor, the importance of paying yourself. The things that we're going to talk about today are all the important things that you're going to need for the survival of your business, keys to actual wealth building, and protecting your business in terms of crisis or in the event of crisis or a mishap. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Sonia.
Absolutely. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm feeling good. The weather's fantastic. Summer's approaching. I'm fully vaccinated. So we're ready for this next hybrid or reinvention of ourselves.
Absolutely. Ready for the world to open. And you know, one of the reasons I'm excited to have you on is of course, the wealth of information you have, but you also have such experience. So you've been advising, you have been an entrepreneur. You've been a financial advisor. You are a financial advisor. So you've experienced some of the things that you are about to talk about. Tell us a little bit about your journey to where you've ended up today.
Sure. So I'm originally from Haiti in the Caribbean. And so for those of us from the Caribbean, we're not used to the corporate journey in corporate America. Most of our relatives and family and friends were entrepreneurs. So although we don't appreciate that now, but growing up, we were all in entrepreneurial families. So I moved to New York when I was 5. And, like every other Haitian son, wanted to be a doctor until I was not passing, biology or chemistry. I said, well, this is kind of a little difficult. If a freshman here and I'm not passing these chemistry classes, maybe doctor is not the way for me. And so, I had to sort of sell that to my mother and pray to God that she didn't sort of pass out. But, we got through that journey and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So I got an MBA. I was a French major undergrad. And what really changed my life was actually study abroad. I got a chance to go to Taiwan during the first and second year of my MBA. We helped upstate companies enter the Taiwanese market. So these were companies who were doing business in Asia, but didn't have the resources or the staff to have a team in Asia. So in part of the sort of deal to go to Taiwan is they paid our expenses. We went to visit all of their customers. So that was the first, internship, access to markets, meeting with customers. And, I'd never been to Asia. Taiwan was an amazing experience. From that, we spent a week in Hong Kong, and that changed it for me. I wanted to go to work in Asia. I ended up graduating. I joined a management training program with HSBC, and 3 years into working in the U.S., I got a chance. I was one of the youngest individuals in the U.S. to get sent on an overseas assignment in Hong Kong. And that really changed my trajectory. I was in a management training program. I was in a consulting group covering Asia and the Middle East. So I got a chance to go to Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Indonesia, and really learn consulting in a very interesting way. Came back to the US and continued and then went into private banking. That actually was an enlightening experience because at the time I was the first African-American private banker there. And I always used to ask questions. I was dealing with clients with $1 to $10 million net worth. And so these were not, families born into money. These were individuals that started and sold the business. I would always ask two questions. How did you make your money? Every customer, right? And in the beginning, I had more white customers, right? And so I would always ask, and they said, we started or sold a business or they did real estate. And that's always stuck with me. Real estate started and sold a business, right? And so that was quite interesting. And then that continued. And then I was able to get in a unique opportunity where I realized that we were not courting Black customers. We were not courting high net worth Black individuals, Black entrepreneurs. And so I made an arrangement where I would start a private clients group targeting high net worth minorities. And so I found entrepreneurs, individuals who had stole a business, who had $2-3 million net worth, who were in a branch. No one knew them. They would come and stand online. They would make their deposits and had no connection to a business banker at all. I was sort of shocked. They said, well, no, really, no one gave us a time or date. They weren't a big fish, right? You came into one of these big banks and you were worth $2-3 million. I mean, that's everybody. I'm like, you sold the house in New York, you had $1 million, right? Let alone a business owner. So no one really gave them. So that group I really focused on. And so we gave them great service. We gave them great thought leadership because they were not used to getting that type of service in a private banking experience. So that was the first enlightening experience of leveraging what I had learned to deal with entrepreneurs. Then I'll get to, maybe it was a midlife crisis, and then the Haiti thing reemerged, and Sonia's smiling. I can see the smile, where I had a chance meeting with President Clinton and wanted to reconnect with other Haitian Americans, and all of a sudden I had a desire to work in the Caribbean. I proceeded to leave the banking industry to go and use everything that I had learned and said, why can't I focus on the Caribbean market? I had never worked in the Caribbean. I didn't understand what it's like to work in the Caribbean, right? And so that was interesting. And so I'll stop there for a second. I had I had an amazing run. I tried a year of doing business in Haiti and sort of brokering business deals. And then I got a great opportunity to work with the island of Trinidad and Tobago, their international finance center. Really, Trinidad wanted to position themselves as the gateway between North and South America. We had researched 30 different international finance center models, and we selected Dubai's model, where you can set up a new entity in the Dubai free zone and do business around Asia or in the Middle East or Africa and have a separate business. So Trinidad wanted to do the same program. And so that was amazing. We did that work for about 18 months, and then the government changed. And so many of you who, when you work in the Caribbean, when the government changes, things change, contracts change. And so I decided to come back to the US. And then a buddy of mine said, hey, you should become a financial advisor because you have a great network. You have a passion about helping entrepreneurs. And I said, no. I said, I did the banking thing. I really want to do the Caribbean thing. And he goes, no. You should really become a financial advisor. And so I joined a company called Fortis Lux 3 years ago. We work with individuals, business owners around wealth creation, around leveraging how to use your business to create wealth. And so this is how I got here. So started out big bank experience, then did some work in the Caribbean, and then ended up back in the States, really taking my own personal entrepreneurial experience, how hard it is, and to really help and guide the work that I do currently.
Right. And so why I'm excited, I mean, it's for all that you said is why I'm so excited that you're going to be here, because you've had such a wide and dynamic set of experiences. And I think that's what makes you a great financial advisor, because you've seen almost everything that people do right and everything that people do wrong in business. And so I want to go back to the business owners that you were working with, those that were worth roughly 2 to 3 million. And what did you learn from working with them?
The other thing that I do very honestly, I share my own journey. I share my own money mistakes. I share my own because I find one, there's a trust issue, right? And I'm going to speak very general and also very candid. There are some folks of color who are not comfortable working with folks of color around their money. This is it's a sort of the elephant in the room in the industry. That's fine. And if you're not comfortable with that, it's okay. But there are many who do, right? And so we have to address that first. And so, if there is someone who says, yes, I want to move forward, obviously I thank them. There's an issue of confidentiality because, we're in a lot in the same circles. We see each other out at various events. And so most folks don't want to get out in the public that they may have made their mistakes. So a lot of times when I'm vulnerable and share, hey, I've made my own fair share, right? So I think that helps in the trust factor. Then after you get to the confidentiality aspect, the 1 to 5, and that's a big accomplishment to have a net worth 1 to 5. I mean, it's a big deal in America, right? And so these are, they started small, they grew, they're either family businesses, they're either working with siblings or they've taken over family businesses. So that's interesting. The questions that I always start with first, I was asked them, who's your accountant, right? I shared the knowledge of when I worked with pretty successful white companies, the model of what they've done to be successful. They always had a good accountant. So my first question is, who are doing the books? Who are, who's preparing the books? Are the books in order, etc.? So that's the first thing, right? And a lot of times, nothing against the H&R Blocks, nothing against the quick tax, nothing against that. But there is a point where you start, and then there's also a point where you evolve. As your business evolves, your team needs to evolve, right? And so a good attorney, right? Who's reviewing the legal documents? Who's reviewing the documents? The CPA, because we like to be in sync with the CPA, because usually the banker has one strategy, the CPA has another strategy. The CPA is trying to help you save money, and then you come to a bank, and then all of a sudden, like, you've not made money for the past 2-3 years. We get it, but you cannot come with these type of books, and then all of a sudden you're going to expect a loan, right? Because I also put on my banking hat because I was also a business banker and done lending, so I understand what you need to do to come into a bank and ask for loans, right? And then this whole idea of I'm not going to personal guarantee. Folks, let's just put this out into the universe. If you're coming in to get a loan and you're not willing to personally guarantee, you're saying to us that you don't believe in your business and you're not going to put your neck on the line, but you want our capital. And so this idea of like, we're not going to personal guarantee, you do that when you're $50, $100 million, right? $1 to $5 million, $1 to $10 million. If you're not going to personal guarantee and you're not putting your neck out, that's a disbelief. So that, Sonia, there are just little things that, a good accountant, a good CPA, getting the books in order, and this idea of like, who's the team? Is it a one-person shop? Is it a two? Who's the management team, right? And I
want to just back up just a little bit, because one of the things that when we talked about earlier that I thought was really important too is, so the team is absolutely important, but having a relationship with a banker, like having a relationship with someone in the bank who's handling your account. And one of the things you had said earlier is, some of the reasons that Black businesses didn't get access to some of the stimulus money was because they didn't have relationships. They didn't have their books in order, number one. And number two, they didn't have relationships with a banker.
Sure, 100%. So, the guidelines with the SBA were very clear, right? And so a lot of these banks, this was new, and they were inundated with the volume, right? And so the first step were your financials. You had to show year X, I did this type of sales, the pandemic hit, and so my business went down, and thus I need help. But if you didn't have books that can show that my numbers, 2018 were X, a lot of entrepreneurs did not have their financials up to date, let alone complete, right? And so they were behind the 8 ball. That was one. Number two, a lot of the banks, because they were inundated, said, we're not going to deal with you unless you are a client. So you had folks who were not didn't have business bankers. And now, they were, you've had bankers who were inundated with the amount of files they had to go through. Was a lot of paperwork, right? And that was too. So I know some entrepreneurs, their bankers called them in advance and said, this is coming down. The window opens this day. I'm going to tee you up and have the files ready. So when the doors open, you're first in the queue. So Sonia, if your books were not in order, and then you didn't have a relationship with the banker, the reason why that a lot of the money didn't go to us because, Sonia, we weren't prepared. We were not prepared.
And so what's important for people to understand is, number one, you can't stress it enough. The books always have to be in order. You should have you should have a strong accounting team. You need to develop these relationships in the bank. And you were saying you also need a good attorney as well, don't you?
100%, because, there's a lot of contracts. Who's reviewing these contracts? People, there's so much money available right now, and there's a lot of wrong money, right? And so people are signing on to loans and covenant restrictions and things that the average banker doesn't even understand this language, let alone someone who's not the expertise in the legal world to be able to review. So, we get into deals that hurt us because we need capital, and you're an entrepreneur, you need capital we don't have the runway, right? Listen, I also did a couple of years at an innovation firm, right? When you're trying to innovate, and you need a little bit of time, right? You need to move forward. You need to pivot. And when you don't have enough capital, you're going to do deals just because you need money. You're desperate. And so you get into things and all of a sudden you realize that's like a 15% loan. That's if you're borrowing money on a credit card, right? And so we start off in business underfunded. We start out with business, and I'm generalizing. And so I don't want to say there are a lot of entrepreneurs who definitely have their acts together. So this is not, I'm just generally stating that some of the reasons why we have difficulties because we start out in a hole and you're trying to get out of a hole, and it's very, very difficult.
So there are also a number of financial tools, right, that people should consider and that we don't consider. And it's interesting when you were talking about some of the trust issues, because some of our challenges, I don't want to say a lot, but some of them are cultural, right? And so one of them is how we think about insurance as well. And so insurance can be a wealth building tool that personally, but it can also be one in business that, again, we're just talking about where people have challenges. There are people who understand this and have been able to maximize these opportunities and use these tools. But talk a little bit about insurance as a tool and your experience with how other communities totally understand the importance of insurance versus how we do.
Sure. I'm going to give you a very live example. I got asked a couple of months ago, there's a Black sorority who invited me and my colleague to come in and speak to their members. It was amazing. We did a great job. It was very engaging. And then one of the members, who's a grandmother, said, I love what you said. I did 3 calls with her to explain to her about insurance, the difference between term insurance, the difference between whole life insurance. And she said, I want to do something for my grandkids. I would like to, she had about 6 grandkids. She gave me their ages because insurance is based on age and health. And so we, after 3 calls, and mind you, she was going to pay for this. This is not, she was going to her daughter or her son to do this. This is grandma wanting to say, I want to do something for my grandkids. Okay. She now is presenting the idea to the kids. And I forget if it was her daughter or her son. She called me back and she said, you didn't prepare me for what I just experienced. I said, what are you talking about? They basically said to her, if you're so focused on insurance, you take it on yourself. How dare you take insurance on my kids? Not understanding that the whole life insurance that she was going to take out, mind you, she was going to pay that the cash value in that insurance, they were going to use, so when the kids are now 20, 25, 30, they could have used those funds not to buy an apartment or start a business. And also, besides that, there's a death benefit, right? So if somebody were to die, there's a death benefit. And so that aspect because, and I said, it's not even the son or daughter would have said, why don't we have a meeting with Reggie? Why don't we explain what we're trying to do here? She was so distraught. She called me and said, you know what? This is not worth my family turmoil that's about to happen because of this gesture of them not understanding the power of insurance, where other races, I'll give an example. I have a colleague who covers the Hasidic community. They fully understand the power of insurance, how insurance is used to transfer wealth, not just one generation, 2, 3 generations. And so growing tax deferred and those proceeds are tax free. Not to generalize, we understand burial insurance. We understand that, hey, got a $50,000 policy. I'm going to die. I'm going to pay for my funeral. There may be a little bit left over for reception. But beyond that, we have a lot to learn about how other communities embrace. That's on the individual side. But when you now talk about on the business side, when you talk about, buy, sell, key man insurance and how insurance is used to transfer wealth to entrepreneurs is something that we haven't even scratched the surface, Sonia.
And so what should a business owner who's listening to this and wants to just get a little bit more information, is there a type of insurance that they should be looking at? Is it a personal insurance? Are there insurance that they can take for their business that if anything were to happen, that their family can benefit? What should they be looking at or investigating?
Sure. I normally first get calls from sometimes I get a call from someone in corporate America. They've worked in corporate America for a long time. They have an idea. They're being downsized or they just had enough. They said they want to, venture out and be an entrepreneur. They've had a nice 401k, nice pension. And we normally have a hard time getting people to convince us to do a friends and family round, which means I have an idea. I need some funds. I need someone to commit some money. I can start my venture, right? Because again, generalizing that we don't have the access to say, hey, give me $50,000 or $100,000. Let me get my idea off the ground. A lot of entrepreneurs of color, if they worked at a place for a long time, they said, you know what? I believe in myself. I'm going to take my own money and launch my venture. So, Sonia, when they do that, they go and start a business. And we know the failure rate of businesses. A lot of them fail, right? And so that person who did that now, I always say that you can borrow for starting a business, but you can't borrow for retirement. They now have used their retirement funds that they've worked all these years, not to mention the tax implications, because now they're getting penalties because they're under, 59, 50, 57, whatever the exact age is, without penalties. So now they're behind the 8 ball. The business may or may not have started. And now if they have a family, are in jeopardy, right? And so that's number one, right? When they were working, there were some insurances that is provided to work. Disability, short-term disability. And most corporate executives, we encourage the ones that are selling America, there is a gap first, right? Because if you go out, most companies pay 60% of your salary, right? And so most people can't even live on 100% of the salary, let alone 60% of the salary. So we encourage the folks that are still working to get their own insurance policy to cover the 40% gap, right? So now that person who's an entrepreneur, there's no 60% from a company. So now they usually don't have a 401k. There's no pension, right? Now you're dealing with, I got to pay for health insurance. And now you're saying money for insurance. So now they're looking at you like you have 3 heads. But what normally happens, Sonia, someone gets hurt. There's mental problems. There's a mental disability and I can't work. So now the person's doomed, Sonia, right? Because now if I have a mortgage, if I have family, I have kids' education, and even you have a lot of single folks who are saying, well, why do I need insurance? But I'm like, if something would happen to you, what's going to happen? Who's going to pay your bills? Who's going to pay? So insurance is very important. Disability insurance is key because we don't talk about disability insurance enough because your ability to get up and work is really what you should insure for. And I'll say one last thing. We understand the concept of I have a car, I need car insurance. I'm in an apartment, I need renter's insurance. I own a home, I need insurance. But when we tell somebody, well, are you insuring yourself? No one really can answer that question. The answer is usually no.
So what I wanted to move to is also, and you had alluded to this in one of your earlier answers, is also the importance of having a management team, and that most investors would prefer, if they're going to invest in a company, know that there at least is a two-founder team and not just a solopreneur. And can you explain why?
Sure. So I have spoken to many, and I've gone to many conferences, listened to so many Zoom sessions about individuals who are seeking funding, whether, VC funding, from beginning to when they start having, I'm talking about real serious conversation, and they're pitching. Usually there is who are the founders? When they hear there's one person, it's usually a concern, right? They want at least there's two individuals who are involved as founders, right? So I've heard that quite a bit, is that some shops really frown upon one founder, right? You have a lot of individuals who have an idea and a lot of solo individuals, solopreneurs who are trying to start out. It's either finding someone that you can get along with that, and then partner up. We have to do a better job in partnering up and collaborating with one another, because we will not survive. It's hard enough by yourself, but let alone if you can get someone to collaborate. One, it's really what the funders are looking for, but also they're asking, what is your team? If it's a tech company, who are the CTO, who's handling the finance, who's doing sales, who's handling all of these responsibilities? They just want to make sure, if I'm giving you my money, is my money safe? They're not even talking about returns yet, Sonia. They want to know, am I getting my money back? But forget the return first. Is this person able to give me my money back and get this idea going?
And so that, if you're seeking money, so if you are fortunate enough to get money, one of the other things you said that you had seen a pattern with is the fear of just paying yourself first, of being able to take whatever money you've received and making sure that you get a salary from your own business. And we hear that from entrepreneurs all the time, that I can't, if I had $1 for every entrepreneur who said, I don't even get a salary, or I don't pay myself, I have to make sure that everybody else is taken care of. But what is the importance of, particularly if you've gotten money, right? If you've gotten an investment, sure, why should you make sure that you are one of those business lines?
There's also a double standard, and I'll get to that in a second. So I'm not even talking about VC funding, because very few of us, and when I say few of us, many folks, very few females of color, very few people get actually VC funding, right? So we're first talking about angel funding, where this is sort of like the first round before you even get, even talking about friends and family, then angel funding, then you're talking about VC funding. But if we just stick to the banking financing, and also the CDFIs, which is sort of the nonprofit lending arms who have money from the government that are really trying to get these entrepreneurs to grow. I've had a couple of clients who have actually received funding. The other thing that's very important is that they looked at the net worth of the individual, right? And so my client, had to put her whole life policy as collateral for this loan, because they had to show that this is a person of means who, again, I'm looking for money, but they're looking for the founder. What is the financial shape of the founder to secure, these loans or these lines of credit, right? And so we have to be mindful of these insurance products can also be used as collateral for lending as well. The paying yourself first, the entrepreneur who's starting the business, they either have left a job, they're either single or have a family, right? And so their bills, right? They have a mortgage. And so the idea of where are they going to get the funds to maintain their lifestyle if they don't get a salary, right? And then you hear them like, oh, I'm only taking 50,000, but they can't survive. And so there's this double standard that white founders, right? They're getting this capital, and they get a proper salary, they're getting proper benefits, and this is generalizing that I hear so much. The black founder is struggling, and it's like, oh no, I don't want to show that I'm getting a salary. My investors won't approve. But I say, well, how are you going to survive? How are you going to retire? And how, so to me, it's if you can explain that to your investors that, look, I get it. if you raised $1 million and all of a sudden you're asking for a $400,000 salary, then that looks crazy, right? But, I'm talking about 100, 150,000. I'm talking about like sensible, like they need to keep their families and lifestyle going and to run this business. If not, what's going to happen? They're either paying a lot of the company revenue is going to pay their personal expenses. Right? I mean, we have to be realistic that they have to survive one or another. But I encourage, always say, pay yourself a salary. It has to be, we have to be mindful and thoughtful, right? But you should be able to go to the investor and say, look, part of the money that I'm raising, right, is to get me to the next 2-3 years, to get me to the next level of getting the business to grow. Explain
for us what a buy-sell agreement is and why that may be important, particularly between partners in business.
It's usually, let's say, an example, you and I are starting a business, Sonia, right? And so we set up a company, right? And we get going, right? And it's usually, look, we're not having this type of conversation where the business has not started generating revenue. I'm talking about like things are starting to go, right? You sit down with your accountant or an attorney and saying, okay, if God forbid, it's almost like you're planning for a divorce at the beginning of we're starting a business, right? And saying, if God forbid, something were to happen to Sonia, right? What's normally going to happen? Sonia's family is going to say, if we were 50-50, let's give an example. If we are 50-50 owners of a business and God forbid something happened to you, right? And let's say you had a son and now your son's calling me and said, oh, by the way, we're very sad. My mom, Sonia, has passed. I would like to have 50% of my mother's share. Or all of a sudden that son says, I'm your new partner. Your son is great. We love seeing him at the family barbecues and the company outings. Your son has nothing to do with this business. Your son doesn't know anything about the business, nor did I agree to go into business with your son. But your son is the heir and is justified to 50% of this business, right? So normally you do a buy-sell agreement. The buy-sell agreement says, if something were to happen to Sonia that we are using an insurance product, let's say I would take $1 million life insurance policy. Sonia would be the beneficiary of my policy. Sonia would take out $1 million life insurance policy. I would be the beneficiary on Sonia's policy, which means that if something happened to Sonia, I would receive $1 million. From that $1 million, which is tax-free, I would take that proceeds and pay Sonia's son off. And now he has his money. He goes on his merry way, and either I run the business or I find a new partner. But I did not agree to have Sonia's son as my new business partner, right? So the buy-sell is a way to protect partners in case, one, you decide to leave the business, or there is a death, unforeseen death, then I have proceeds that I can make sure my partner's family and heirs are taken care of.
Right. Reggie, you provided so much information for us today. Where would you advise people just to start? I mean, we talked about the importance of insurance as a wealth building tool, the importance of setting up ways to protect your business, the importance of having the right management team internally, but also the right advisory team to make sure that you have access to all of the information and have your book set up correctly. Like, it's a lot to think about for someone feeling a little overwhelmed based on everything that you presented today. Like, what would be just a first step that you would suggest for them to start, or a resource that they could use?
That's a great starting point. I always say it's not where you were yesterday, it's where you are today and where you want to go forward. People will say, well, do you have any minimums for your clients? And we don't have minimums. The only thing we say is we're not going to chase anybody, right? And so that, we're very fortunate. This is a referral type of business. This is someone we've done a great job for and said, hey, you should call Reggie and his team, right? And so it's really about when they sit down with me, I'm saying, okay, whatever mistakes you've done in the past or whatever you've not done, will you agree to, from today going forward, we're going to address those things? And it is overwhelming, right? If someone doesn't have a lot of funds, it's unrealistic to say that you want them to focus on a pension, a 401k, a buy sell, or this. So there are some basic things first. We want to make sure that, disability is, I would say the number one thing we should talk about, or you should speak with your financial advisor, is disability insurance, right? And the other thing is you have to also look at yourself in the mirror and saying, what is my relationship with money? So I recently had a call with a husband and wife team, and we're looking to sort of do some more things with them together. And a lot of athletes, entertainers, and you ever wonder, why does that person just had a $30 million contract and then they're broke? Like we hear stories over and over and over again. And it's usually their relationship with money, either how they grew up, what they experienced. And so, we're now comfortable going to therapists. We're now comfortable talking about therapy. This was the first conversation I had it was a husband and wife, and I had an in-depth conversation with the wife, is there are a money therapist, where what is the root of why I go through money? What is the root of addressing the stuff first? Because I'm not trained, I'm not an accountant, I don't give tax advice, I'm not a therapist, but I think linking up the relationship with money, if you're good at it, if you're not good at it, what went wrong in the past, maybe there's some work that needs to be done to figure out what's causing the blockage with the money. And then we're here to help. We have a clear strategy of how to create wealth. And we have something called the 6 areas of financial planning. Whether you're a teacher making $50,000 or you're a surgeon making $5 million, it's the exact same way, right? It's inflows, it's outflows. If X amount's coming in, X amount's going out, and what's left over, right? And with what's left over, what is the priority of what needs to be done, right? And then most people want to talk about investment conversation, but we start with protection first. Like we need to, the protection is the foundation. You're building a house, the foundation is not good. You can't worry about third floor windows. You can't worry about the walk-in closet on the second floor. There's some foundational work, and sometimes it's with us personally to sort of figuring out, looking ourselves in the mirror. And then I would say reach out to a financial advisor. And then we can prioritize about it's cash flow, Sonia. It's understanding, where am I going to create revenue? How much is coming in? What's going out? What's left over? And what's left over, most entrepreneurs, and this is my one pain point. This is the one thing, we normally, as an entrepreneur, we say we're going to reinvest in the business, which is great. Reinvest. We're not taking money out to make sure that we can retire properly. And that by meaning we're setting up for retirement personally. We're doing the insurances. So that's the mistake entrepreneurs make. And if the business fail, you can get a job, but you've not prepared for yourself personally.
Reggie, thank you so much. You've given me a lot to think about. And I know that this information is going to be helpful for our audience. Please, if anyone is interested in getting in touch with you, please let us know how we can reach out to you if we have more questions or would like to talk to you further.
Sure. Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Reginald Canal. If you Google that on LinkedIn, you could always send me a message on LinkedIn, and I'm more than happy. Just reference Sonia's podcast. Just kind of know where you heard this, and more than happy to continue conversation.
All right, that's great. This is Business First with Sonia Aline. Thank you all for listening. And if you have questions, if you have comments, if there are other guests that you'd like to hear from, please let us know. Follow us on Instagram and look for us wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks, Reggie.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you for having me.
Business First is hosted and produced by Sonia Aline. Associate producer, Lauren Turner. Edited by Ken Johnson. Executive producers, Omar Thompson, Andrew Kalb, and Ken Johnson. Find the Business First podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, or wherever you get your podcasts. The Business First podcast is a Mean Old Lion Media and Say It Loud Network production.